All right, welcome into this week at Gridiron Icon. As you know, this is a big week for those of us that happen to be Rams fans, and I am really excited to get a few minutes with a guy who covers that other squad in San Francisco. We are joined by Kyle Madson, who is the host of Candlestick Chronicles, also the midday producer at 957 The Game. And he also, in his spare time, just happens to be the managing editor for the Niners Wire for USA Today. My friend Kyle from the other side, those San Francisco 49ers, welcome in, man. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. I took an afternoon off to hang out, and you want to talk football, so I'm always down to do that. I can always make time for that.
I got lucky, man. I just reached out to Kyle on Twitter, which is where everybody meets people now.
Totally.
Didn't swipe right. Come on, people. But Kyle jumped right on. I mean, it's a big week if you live anywhere in the orbit of the Rams and the 49ers. So before we get started, just real quick bio on Kyle, and we'll talk about where to follow him at the end of the show. How'd you become a Niners fan, man?
My mom is a 49ers season ticket holder and has been as long as I can remember. I was born in 90, so my dad is a Raiders fan, and when I was growing up and in that kind of impressionable age, the Raiders were out of town, and my mom had season tickets. So my first football game was a Niner game. It was actually, my first football game was a Niners-Colts game in Peyton Manning's rookie year. So it was Peyton Manning, Marshall Faulk, before he went to the Rams, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, T.O., Bryant Young, Ken Norton Jr. I've gone back and watched it. The game was bananas. But I was like 7, and it was like I was hooked just from that point forward. So it's been Niners every fall and winter for my entire life.
He bleeds red. So basically, young Kyle gets to hang out with a bunch of Hall of Famers in his very first NFL football game.
Yeah, right? Like, just insane. It's totally bananas.
And arguably some of the best players at their position to ever play this game. Wow, man.
Yeah, if you're building a team of players that played from the late 90s and into the early 2000s, like Marshall Faulk is probably your starting running back, Peyton Manning's probably your starting quarterback, and Terrell Owens is probably one of your receivers. Like, that's, oh man. And then Jerry Rice is there too, who is pretty good. It's crazy.
I can't even fathom that, man. And of course, you got to go to the Stick. If you're in the 90s, right? You got to go to Candlestick.
Yeah, I was at Candlestick quite a bit, especially once I got older and my mom could be like, "Hey, you want my tickets for this game? You can drive yourself and go." And once I moved down to Arizona after I graduated college and made it up for a couple games a year. I was there at the playoff games, good and bad, through the Harbaugh era. The final game at Candlestick, just a really, really cool spot. I miss it for sure.
Oh, wow, man. You've got deep history. And by the way, the coolest mom ever to get you introduced to NFL football with a bunch of Hall of Famers that early on.
Got super.
God, I love it, man.
Sure.
Well, okay. We've got the right guy in the building and on the show today. Somebody that can talk true San Francisco 49er football. Turns out there's a big game this week, my friend. And you have owned the Rams through 5 games. The last game was 31-10 49ers. And from our perspective as Rams fans and just football fans and a guy that lives the game like you do, we got to start in the backfield to start hitting you with some questions. We got to talk quarterback because that's probably the biggest story coming out of San Francisco, even as late as this afternoon. And you have a fantastic article on Niners Wire. Encourage everybody to go check that out. Who do you expect to see at quarterback this Sunday, even with the news of Garoppolo's thumb? Does Jimmy G get the start? Are we going to see Trey Lance again? What are you hearing out there?
I think Kyle Shanahan really wants to. Well, there's so many different angles to this, and there has been since March when they made the trade up in the draft. So I think Kyle Shanahan wants to start Jimmy Garoppolo. And if Jimmy Garoppolo was 100% healthy, I mean, you said it, he's not 5-0 against the Rams, but I think he's 4-0. I think Nick Mullins got one of those wins. But Jimmy Garoppolo has done a nice job against the Rams. And even remember last year at the game at Levi Stadium, Garoppolo was hobbled. He had the bad ankle, and they ran that game plan where his average depth of target was like a yard. it was a lot of run stuff, a lot of Deebo, and then they hit the George Kittle shot over the middle and just kind of made it easy on Garoppolo. The difference with that though was that was an ankle. That was a just couldn't plant, so you figure out what throws he can make. This is a torn ligament in the thumb on his throwing hand. And the radio show I produce, we have a doctor from UCSF on, a sports medicine doctor every week. And Kyle Shanahan was like, yeah, we're just waiting for the ligament to reattach. And the doctor we had on is like, that doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't happen in 2 weeks, especially if you're trying to throw, especially if it gets hit during the game, which is bound to happen. So I think Kyle Shanahan wants to start Jimmy Garoppolo and is going to do everything he can to justify starting Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think it's going to be Trey Lance, because I don't think what Garoppolo will be able to do with the football is going to be enough to justify starting him over Lance, because Lance in the second half against Houston looked pretty good. And I think when you take them, if everything in a vacuum is equal between the two going into Sunday, you also have the future to think about. And if you can get Trey Lance a start against a good Rams team in a playoff atmosphere, the Niners need to win. It's a must win for the Niners. Yeah. So this is a must win for San Francisco. I just think it's the right thing to do to start Lance regardless. But if Garoppolo can make all the throws and do everything Shanahan wants him to do, then he's going to play. That's kind of been Shanahan's MO all year.
Incredible, man. Yeah, I tell you, did you think there's any opportunity or chance, I should say, that he would platoon him like he had done early in the season, where Jimmy G's getting some, Trey Lance is getting some?
No, I think that he was super uncomfortable with that as a play caller.
Yeah,
he talked. Yeah, and he talked about it, how he calls things with like 2 or 3 different plays in mind. And so if he calls a play and the defense reacts one way with Lance, it messes up how he's going to call something later with Garoppolo. So other offensive coordinators have figured it out. He has not. If we see Lance with Garoppolo starting, it'll be because Garoppolo is playing poorly or gets hurt. And that's a very realistic situation where they're going to give it a go with Jimmy, and he throws a really bad interception because the ball sails on him, and then it's Lance moving forward, which to me is a mistake. Like, if just the rookie needs the reps. You can't have him taking scout team reps all week and then go, oh yeah, hey, here's Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Von Miller. Go get him, kid. Like, that's not how the game works. So if I'm betting on it, I think it's Lance.
Very interesting, man. And he just adds a completely different dimension to this game if it's Trey Lance. And then again, kind of segueing into a lot of your work on Niners Wire. But what does Trey Lance bring to the field in this game that Jimmy G just doesn't? Because you mentioned Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Floyd, Greg Gaines is coming on. He is facing a big time defense. We know about his athleticism? We knew that about Trey Lance, but you had another great write up, and I want to pull that out of you a little bit. What does he bring to the field?
He is an athlete in the way that. So when you watch him in college, like, the run game was such a big part of what he did, but he was such a physical runner that worked at the FCS level. He has learned very quickly in the NFL that you can't run through NFL linebackers. Like, an NFL safety coming downhill isn't just going to bounce off you anymore. And Justin Reed stuck him really good short of the first down marker against Houston. He had a 4th and goal against Arizona back in week 5 where he lowered his shoulder into a linebacker in a corner, and he was going this way and then just stopped, went straight down, no forward progress at all. So he's learning that, and I think Shanahan's learning that a little bit. So his athleticism is more in defenses having to respect when he runs out on a boot action and they low high a defender where it's, George Kittle in the flat, but then you've got Deebo Samuel in the crosser up top. Now the defender not only has to account for those two guys, but they also have to account for the fact that Lance can tuck it and run and pick up yards that way. So he brings that element. He brings a downfield passing element that they just flat out don't have with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, they averaged, ESPN Next Gen Stats had this, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, it was 11.5 yards, air yards per attempt, which was their highest in the last 3 years. And they gained something like 205 yards, passing yards, just on yards through the air. And that's so dramatically different than what we see with Garoppolo, where so many of the yards are yak. It's yards after the catch, where it's Deebo Samuel over the middle, and it's George Kittle over the middle, and okay, here's one to Brandon Ayuk, and here's a quick throw to Juwan Jennings. With Lance, they're the same plays, but instead of just dumping it off to George Kittle and letting Kittle create yards, he's finding Deebo Samuel. The touchdown pass that he threw to Deebo Samuel actually against Houston is a great example of this, where if you watch that play, he goes bootleg right, he stops. Now, Travis Benjamin, the receiver, is coming from left to right in the formation. He's on a deep crosser. And that's the throw Garoppolo makes every time. He's got the guy open on the cross. He's going to throw it. It's going to be a gain. There might be some yards after the catch, but it's not a touchdown. Lance stops. He sees Deebo Samuel with the safety peeling off towards the flat or towards the crosser, and he's going to unload it. And he's going to unload it on a line with enough velocity that the safety doesn't have time to get there. And Deebo makes a catch and then does Deebo stuff and breaks a tackle and gets in the end zone. So that downfield passing element is so dangerous when you have a run game like the 49ers have. The rub with Lance is he going to make the right read all the time? And how many times is his missing of the first read going to lead to something bad happen, whether it's a sack or a fumble or an interception? So there's definitely some risk reward for this week if he's playing, but long term, like you just see, like I said, that athleticism on the boot actions and then his ability to push the ball down the field, you can really see like where this offense would take off with him growing as a passer.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, that popped in your article on Niner Wire to me too, the deep passing game. When I look at Trey Lance, I think we're all looking at him, okay, we're slotting him as that stereotypical athletic, bigger guy, quarterback. But I see a lot of what of course, Shanahan, McVay, we'll get into that. A lot of what he's trying to do with Stafford is a lot of what you could see would happen with Trey Lance really successfully. And when I'm looking at this from defensive side, Aaron Donald will be ears pinned back like he always is. But I'm looking at the safeties and Taylor Rapp and Jordan Fuller and saying, if they bite on that play, that classic Shanahan play action, I mean, he ran the ball 44 times against us in that last contest. Yeah. Banged up. He kept running the ball, which is something Rams fans want to see McVay doing. But if that play action pass thing comes together, man, Trey Lance could be lethal, and he just needs the experience.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that kind of got lost a little bit last week was Elijah Mitchell's return. The rookie running back from Louisiana, he's just so electric in a way that no other running back on the roster is. You know, Jeff Wilson Jr. is fine, and Jermichael Hasty is kind of whatever.
Blue collar guys.
They're just hard nosed runners, and they're gonna get the tough yards, and they're just guys like not Raheem Mostert. Elijah Mitchell brings a lot of the Raheem Mostert game, that kind of outside zone. He has the speed, but he's also super tough between the tackles. He always seems to get like, I don't have a stat on this, but I swear he leads the league in like plays that were going to go for no gain, but he ends up getting 4 yards out of it. Like he just runs into the pile and all of a sudden he's a couple yards down the field and finishing face first. So I think having him back, and you mentioned the Niners run game against the Rams last time, like that's such a vital part of what they want to do offensively. And if they are starting Lance, I think we see a heavy dose of that run game early to, as you brought up, start setting up that play action and start setting up some easier throws.
Yeah, man, the Niners flexed on the Rams. I mean, that was so Shanahan flexing on McVay in that last game. The last 5 games, which the Niners have all won, but that last one was such a statement. As a Rams fan, you're just sitting back and gut punched that entire game. They couldn't stop it. And Mitchell, he reminds me again. There's so many comparisons between these two teams. He reminds me of Cam Akers a little bit when Cam Akers is playing and healthy, just dynamic, and you're going, they stole this kid. They stole him. So that's a nice segue into the weapons. I mean, and I got to talk about the guy that just seemed, I mean, he's slowly becoming a Ram killer over these last few games. Deebo Samuel, man, what makes him so special, and why does he seem to get up for the Rams? I mean, we know there was some trash talking with Aaron Donald going, who is this guy, a few games ago, but he's a Ram killer right now.
Deebo kind of kills everybody. At least this season. I think so last year he definitely had a couple of great games against LA, but this year he's doing that to everyone. And Shanahan started deploying him more as a runner, just like not even on those jet sweeps. He's just lining up in the backfield and taking handoffs.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because we found out that he doesn't work out with the running backs. He's not in the running back room. He's not doing drills. He's just naturally good at finding holes and accelerating. And I don't know if it's his build or the way he runs, but I just don't think defenders have kind of caught on to how fast he actually is. And then with how physical he is with the ball in his hands, like he's just hard to tackle. Like first you got to catch him and then you got to bring him down. It's so rare that one guy gets him to the ground. The fact that he has taken this leap as a receiver where he's going for 1,300 yards through the air while also becoming this like elite scorer on the ground. He's going to finish with like close to 400 rushing yards. Like that's great. Like that is just a unique skill set that not a lot of guys have. And Shanahan, to his credit, like deploys him perfectly. So, yeah, it's that size that, I mean, he's built like a refrigerator. Like he's like
tank.
5'11" and just as wide as he is tall, really thick lower body. And he's fast and hard to tackle. That there's not a lot of finesse to it.
And he brings the attitude.
The Niners getting the ball.
Man.
Yeah. He's nasty.
He is nasty. So that's a guy that I think everybody's watching to see what happens on Sunday. You've got to believe that Shanahan's going to put the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. So you look at these Rams linebackers. I mean, you're a guy who breaks down the tape. You cover this team. You look at the Rams on defense. The front four is very, very good, if not one of the absolute best. Absolutely, with Aaron Donald, everybody's among the best.
Sure.
But you look at our inside linebackers, and then there's that guy that also seems to always pop up big against the Rams, that guy named George Kittle.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got Troy Reeder and Trayvon Howard because Ernest Jones got banged up. Is that a spot you expect to see, even with Trey Lance as the possible starter, you expect to see Shanahan kind of pick on those inside linebackers a little bit? Yeah,
because if for no other reason, like even good linebackers have a hard time with stopping George Kittle, right? Like it's not as easy as, just throw a good coverage linebacker on him and you're fine. Like he's a special player who is really impactful in the Niners offense. I thought it was really interesting last week because when we went in, I thought they were going to try and force feed Kittle, because when you look at all their big offensive games this year, or when their offense really started rolling, it was when Kittle was being targeted a lot, getting heavy workloads in the passing game. So I thought, hey, it's the Texans. They're not very good. They're going to drop a lot of easy throws to Kittle and let Kittle go make some plays. He got one target. Well, two. One got intercepted. The other one was that catch over the middle he made while being interfered with. I really think they're going to try, not because of anything to do with the Rams personnel, because if you have a bad linebacker or a bad coverage linebacker, like Shanahan's just going to kill that guy. And to that point, there was a game in 2019 against the Panthers where Luke Kuechly was still playing and still playing well, and looked like he'd never played football, like just was going the wrong way every time, and just getting lost in his blocks. And it was really wild. And it was the first time I was like, oh, that's what Shanahan's so effective at. So with the Rams specifically, there may not be a player where it's like, oh yeah, isolate that guy and he's cooked, but Shanahan's going to find ways to get Kittle the ball. And I think if they're going to beat the Rams, they have to. Like if he has another one catch for 28 yards or whatever, like I don't know how the Niners are going to move the ball enough to hang with the Rams if Kittle's not heavily involved. So it's just his route running has gotten so much better. And then he's so physical after the catch. He's so physical, like on his releases, like even if you try and body him, he's so good at getting off of that and getting into his route. And then after the catch, we know how good he is. So, man, he's, I don't want to say night and day because he was really good a couple years ago too, but just his style of play, he's better at contested catches. His route running's really improved. I think he's going to be heavily involved on Sunday.
Yeah, I can't see a world where George Kittle isn't more involved even in the last couple of games. And and of course, he's always playing through injuries too. That guy's just tough as they come.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that we're going to see, because this is going to be Shanahan versus Raheem Morris a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a world where we might see a little bit of Jalen Ramsey on Kittle, especially if he starts hot.
Yeah, you have like that's the kind of player where Ramsey, a guy like Derwin James, both FSU guys,
good comp.
They have that safety cornerback versatility and the size and athleticism to kind of hang with Kittle a little bit. So that's, if I was game planning for the Niners and I was the Rams, that's the first thing I would do. Is like, hey, Jalen Ramsey's going to follow around George Kittle and we'll figure everything else out. Like you
must be watching Rams Twitter, man, because I tell you what, Rams fans are just going bonkers the past few weeks with the way Morris uses Jalen Ramsey. He's not immediately assigned to the number one wide receiver. He'll play a role. Yeah, he'll bounce him around and do all that. But this smells to me like one of those games where Kittle has the potential to be absolutely dominant and take the game over with a strong running game, that I could see Jalen Ramsey being assigned to Mr. Kittle more than once on this one. But give us – go ahead.
And I think, too, if you do that, you give him the opportunity, because Jalen Ramsey's such a smart, skilled player. If it's Trey Lance starting, you can bait him into a couple bad throws. And if you let Jalen Ramsey just kind of hang out in the middle of the field and let that happen, where he can just kind of use his instincts and get where he needs to go. Jair Alexander, Packers corner, who I think is a really good player. He's not Jalen Ramsey. Did a similar thing in week 3. Kittle's running up the seam, and Jair Alexander breaks off of his receiver to get to the middle of the field, left his receiver by himself because he knew the ball was going to Kittle, and made an interception on a really, really nice play when he wasn't even the guy covering him. So I could see Jalen Ramsey doing something similar.
Yeah, I could see that too. Ramsey's going to be ready if Mahoris has him all prepped up, because you just never know. I'm one of those guys that has tremendous respect for Kyle Shanahan, even though he plays, he's the rival of my favorite team. But he just has a way of rising against the Rams, and in big games. We're not going to go into all the Super Bowl mistakes on other teams and all that, but the man is an offensively brilliant guy, and he's going to find where you're weak. And that this is the matchup I'm watching. So give us an under the radar, in your opinion, offensive player that could come up big in this game. Is there somebody we should be watching?
Man, does Brandon Ayuk count? I'm not even sure he counts. Like, he's a first round pick. This is where it gets tough. Like, Laken Tomlinson, the Niners left guard, is having a really good year. But you're not going to really watch like the left guard.
Some of us nerds do. I'm all over that line of scrimmage stuff.
Daniel Brunskill is not a good player, but for some reason, like, does a really nice job against Aaron Donald and Aaron Donald only. He's just not great against anybody else. But for some reason has gotten the better of Aaron Donald a few times. Juwan Jennings, I'll pull his name out.
Okay.
I keep expecting him. 7th round pick from Tennessee. He's in his second year. Got hurt last year and didn't play. But this year caught a touchdown in week 2. And since then, or from that point until the last 4 or 5 weeks, was just kind of absent. But he's such a good run blocker. Like, he loves run blocking. He got a Jaguars player ejected because of how aggressively he was run blocking him, and the Jags player got mad and threw a punch and got tossed. Shanahan loves that, but he's starting to grow into his own as a pass catcher a little bit too. Really physical after the catch. He's not super athletic, but he's big. He's physical. Like, his college tape when I was watching him, because I didn't watch him until they drafted him. It was like, in a Rocky movie, like the last round, like, because early on in the fight, it's Rocky getting his ass whooped or his butt whooped. And then it's the middle rounds, it's Rocky coming back. But then the final round or two, it's just both guys are wailing away the entire round. That's how Juwan Jennings plays football. Like, every catch is a boxing match. And he's had a couple of bad drops in the middle of the field. Had a fumble against the Bengals, which would have been pretty costly if they hadn't recovered it. But I just keep expecting him to have this really breakout game. Like, right now he's 1 to 2 catches and maybe a touchdown here or there. But I feel like there's a game coming where they're going to get him a couple of screens and he's going to break one and he's going to have a nice catch over the middle. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Number 15, Juwan Jennings.
Okay. Got a dark horse candidate as a guy that makes an impact on the game. And I'll tell you what, that'd be so Shanahan. We're so worried about Kittle and Samuel and that running game that up pops another name. That would be so Shanahan. So,
Right.
Hey, Raheem Morris, listen in to what Kyle just gave us. All right here, man? All right. Okay,
sure
big news today. Yeah, I saw you tweeting earlier today. COVID has entered the facility there in San Francisco. My God, man. Dante Jackson, Kwan Williams, Jimmy Ward, who I think is kind of the heart and soul of that defense outside of Fred Warner, who I think is a freaking stud. And then even Raheem Mostert. I mean, are we looking at Josh Norman and some rookie corners? Is this what Matt Stafford is scouting for now?
So check this out. The 49ers have one healthy cornerback, and it's Josh Norman.
Man. My heart's broken, buddy.
I know. I'm sure you're weeping. It sounds a lot like a laugh, but he's actually crying, guys.
It's a cry.
Josh Norman is their only healthy corner. So there's Emmanuel Mosley, who's their number one corner. He got hurt back in week 13. They opened his practice window. So there's a chance he plays, but he had a high ankle sprain as a cornerback. Like, I'm not super optimistic. Kwan Williams is their starting slot corner. He's on the COVID list. Dante Johnson is the next cornerback. He was probably going to start outside across from Ambry Thomas, who we'll get to in a minute. But Dante Johnson is the backup nickel. He's on COVID. So that brings up Diamador Lenore, rookie third-round pick, who's like the third slot guy on the COVID list. So he's out. Ambry Thomas, who'd started to kind of come into his own, third-round pick out of Michigan, struggled early on, but has started to kind of figure things out a little bit, on the COVID list. So it is Josh Norman and three guys on the practice squad. Yeah, he got benched last week. That's correct. Yep, got benched. Committed a pass interference penalty. This is the state of the Niners secondary. Josh Norman commits a PI, his 12th one of the year. He gets pulled for Dante Johnson, who immediately next play commits a PI. So that's where the Niners secondary is at. They have three guys on their practice squad. Darqueze Dennard, they just signed yesterday, a former first round pick from the Bengals.
Yeah.
And then a couple of guys you probably never heard of. So, although if you're in SoCal, Luke Barku from San Diego State, shout out the Aztecs, but it's rough. Right. It's rough.
That's ugly when you consider this guy. Maybe you've heard of him. Cooper Kupp is going for the Triple Crown Sunday.
Who's that?
Maybe you've heard of that guy, number 10. He's kind of good.
Yeah, pretty good player.
I mean, you got Cooper Kupp roaming around. There's some guy named Odell Beckham Jr. Tyler Higbee can really shock and surprise at times. And then we've got some rookies after we lost Robert Woods. I got to tell you, man, there's a part of me that's excited to hear that, even though I want to play the best players. I always want to play Jimmy Ward. I think he brings a lot of emotion. But there's another part of me that scares the hell out of me, because this is where Sean McVay goes, I'm going to empty the backfield. I'm going to go 5 receiver sets because they got no corners. And he plays right into something that Shanahan may want him to play into. So that's a matchup, that whole situation I'm going to be watching closely. Now, is there a chance these guys come off COVID protocol?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of them are in the time frame to be able to. Now, whether they do, I don't know. We don't know whether they're asymptomatic or symptomatic or what, but the timeline would work where they could test out by Sunday. That's if it was Josh Norman and Dante Johnson and Diamador Lenore, like, you wouldn't feel great about it if you're the Niners, but D'Amico Ryan's their defensive coordinator, has done a really excellent job this year because their secondary has been atrocious all year. Like, that's a huge point of contention I have with how they built this team, but he's done a really nice job of kind of masking it, doing some well-timed blitzes, the pass rush, just kind of affecting quarterbacks enough that it takes some of the pressure off that. But you mentioned Jimmy Ward. He's so important just because of how good he is in man coverage, but then his range to take away deep shots. I don't know, at some level, like, they're all NFL players, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, if it's Luke Barku against Cooper Kupp, like, that's not a matchup where the Niners are gonna win that one a lot. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, they can still split the reps. The Niners win 40% of those. Like, no, they're going to be lucky to win 10% of those. And so that's kind of the part of the barrel they're at is like, man, can you provide enough help for these guys while also not letting Tyler Higbee just run around in the middle of the field by himself? It could get really, really ugly. I expect at least a couple guys to come off the list on Sunday. I don't know if all of them will, but man, you wouldn't feel great if you were the 49ers. And if the Rams wanted to line up and run it all day, I think the Niners would take it for sure.
Yeah. No, I've got my own concerns on that too. I'll tell you what, the dark horse on our side of the ball, or the guy to keep your eye on that nobody talks about, is Van Jefferson too.
Oh, he's so good.
Is our third receiver. Yeah, if they're down a couple corners and they put all they got on Cooper and on OBJ, then look out. Van Jefferson may have a career night.
Before he was 2020 draft, right?
Yeah.
So before the 2020 draft, yeah, that's right, because it's during we had the Florida sideline reporter on, their radio sideline reporter, and he talked about, because we were talking to him about some player from Florida. I can't remember who it was, but we were talking to him about him, and we're like, hey, who else from Florida can we watch? And he mentioned Van Jefferson and Freddie Swaim, who was in this year's draft, I think. But he was basically like, Van Jefferson's going to be a really good player. There's just a lot of other good players around him that they don't get a ton of targets. So he had specifically mentioned Van Jefferson, and Van has been excellent this year. Like, I thought the Rams offense might be derailed a little bit without Robert Woods, but
so did I.
Man, adding Odell Beckham Jr. helps, but having Van Jefferson as your third guy is extremely helpful as well.
It's big. Your counterpart for USA Today that covers the Houston Texans, Mark, and his last name escapes me. Mark, Lane. I'm sorry. I love you,
Mark
man.
Lane. I'm a big Mark Lane
supporter.
Mark Lane.
Yeah, Mark's fantastic. He's been on the show and a lot of fun to talk to, but he actually covered Van Jefferson in high school.
Oh, wow.
With Sean Jefferson, said Van Jefferson is just an incredible route runner and just a really, really good football player. So I could see him having a big night. In the interest of time, I'm going to move you on to it's just a pet subject for me, and I want to pick the brain of a Niner loyalist. Where are we on McVay and Shanahan? There is a lot of stuff. It's like big brother, little brother syndrome. Mm-hmm. They've got a history together in Washington. So does Matt LaFleur. They're all buddies and hang out in the offseason. But you really get the feeling that big brother has been beating the crap out of little brother now for 5 games. Mm-hmm. And what's the temperature on the Shanahan-McVay rivalry out there in the Bay Area?
I guess
Does
it depends on
his number.
I guess it depends a little bit on who you ask, because even I'm sure you remember this. Their first matchup in 2017 on Thursday Night Football at Levi Stadium was like 47-45. Like, it was just bananas. It's like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Great.
Was it Nickel Roby-Coleman who almost had a pick six in that one for them? I can't remember. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Good memory.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask. So to me, like, the records a little bit speak for themselves. Like, what Matt LaFleur's done in Green Bay is super impressive, but also Matt LaFleur has Aaron Rodgers. Like, let me see Matt LaFleur go 36-9 or whatever with Jordan Love, and then okay, let's with Sean McVay. He has a much better record than Kyle Shanahan, but he was doing it with Jared Goff. Like, that's nuts. Jared Goff stinks. So
a Bay Area, oh my God, you're killing me. A Bay Area guy, and
he's
ties to Marin County. I'm a Goff lover. I admit it. Apologist.
He's all right. That's okay.
You're not a fan.
I'm sorry. He's not very good. But
there's tons of Rams fans cheering you on right now. Trust me.
But I mean, I do this thought exercise with people because people point to Shanahan's record. Like, he's a couple games below 500 as a coach. He's only been in the playoffs once. But when you consider he had a full season where it was Brian Hoyer and CJ Beathard, and then a couple games of Jimmy Garoppolo at the end, and then you get Jimmy Garoppolo for 3 games in 2018, and then it's CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. And then you get 2019 where they go 12-4, 13-3, and go to the Super Bowl with Garoppolo. And then 2020, it's some Garoppolo, but he's banged up, and then it's more Nick Mullins, and he's not very good, and there's some CJ Beathard at the end. The fact he's anywhere close to 500 with a bunch of second and third string quarterbacks, to me, is pretty impressive.
It's very impressive, man. To me, it's very impressive.
But then you get people out here who are like, man, get to the playoffs. Like, I don't care. Like, at some point the excuses run out. So I think it depends on who you ask out here. I think they're like, I think if you swapped McVay and Shanahan, like, I think the team records would be pretty similar. The offenses look a little different. Like, do the Rams even roster a fullback?
No.
They run like 0-21, and the Niners run 21, like more than any other team in the league. So the offenses would look different, but I don't think there's anything McVay does as a coach that's more impactful than anything Shanahan does. He did hire Brandon Staley, which, like, Robert Saleh is great, and D'Amico Ryan's been really good, but I think the Brandon Staley hire and the way they work together. Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic wrote a really good piece about how they kind of learn from each other. Yeah, she's really, really good. I think that's where McVay has done a great job, like just hiring good assistants. I think Zach Taylor came from their staff.
Yeah. Shane Walden up there in Seattle now.
Matt LaFleur was there before the Titans, right? So that's kind of where I think McVay has a little bit of an edge. Is like, man, you look at the guys who have come out of there, and then the Niners had Saleh, who is a defensive coordinator, and Mike LaFleur, who's their OC with the Jets. And they just didn't do a lot this year. But yeah, I think McVay's great. And he and Shanahan, to me, are like in that same kind of level. But I mean, the wins speak for them. I mean, the wins are what matters. The results-based league, right? And McVay's done it a lot more.
I got to tell you, though, man, this is one of those rivalries I hope stays intact for a long time, because not only is it personal between them as friends, but I think they're both really good football coaches, really good football coaches. I think at this point, in my estimation, you could shoot me down if you like, I feel like Shanahan knows just enough about McVay emotionally to push a few more buttons. And that's why I've just noticed it. He made some comments about when LaFleur and McVay were on his staff in Washington that made me go, oh, so he knows what to tap into a little bit in a game situation. And that's why I think this game coming up this weekend is huge for McVay. I think if he could get Shanahan off his back, beat him, possibly get the NFC West crown if the Cardinals tank, and get the number 2 seed in the playoff, I think that there'll be some smiling, winking, and nudging between these two guys. And I don't think we could ask for a better matchup this weekend. Yeah,
and I mean, you talk about the stakes, like being a possible 2 seed versus being a 5 seed, like that's the difference between having 1 or 2 home playoff games versus none. Like, I can't wrap my head around the idea of the Niners winning 6 in a row against like a really good version of the Rams. This is also the first time, like, you talk about the rivalry. So for me growing up, the Niners dominated for so long.
I know.
But then the Rams with Kurt Warner and the greatest show on turf, they dominated for so long, and then both teams were bad, and then the Rams got really good, and now the Niners are kind of back a little bit more in the mix. So yeah, I'm excited for this to be a thing, and I think it's going to be for a while. I'm a big Matt Stafford supporter, by the way.
He's a good baller, man. He's had some rough outings lately. Yeah.
I'm pulling for him to play well in the playoffs, because whenever I would bring up his numbers and, you know, his success that he did have in Detroit, it's like, well, win a playoff game. He hasn't won a playoff game. It's like, yeah, it's on some terrible teams, man. Like, so the fact that they go
team sport,
right? The fact they're gonna win 12 or 13 games this year, I would bet on them to win a playoff game. I'm pulling for the guy. I'm tired of the anti-Stafford narrative.
Yeah, I think he's getting it all out of his system now. He's had a couple multi-pick games, pick sixes. Let's get that all flown out of the way, kick it to the sideline. Let's get a W here. So we're going to put you on the spot before we move into our 2-minute drill to close out. Put you on the spot here. What are your predictions for this game? Score-wise, W's, L's? What do you think?
I think the Rams win. With the Niners kind of question mark at quarterback, if it's a hobbled Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance's first ever start against this defense, and then you factor in the Niners' secondary problems and their guys on the COVID list. They have so many things stacked against them in a spot where they don't have a huge margin for error. Like the Rams are really good. They're not playing their best lately, but I think on Sunday they're going to be the more talented team by just enough that any schematic advantage Shanahan might have just goes out the window a little bit. Like 31-10 earlier this season, you had the fluke interception for Jimmy Ward where Odell Beckham Jr. and Matt Stafford just weren't on the same page. And then you had the drop by Tyler Higbee that turns into a pick six. Like that, you're down 14-0 in the first quarter on the road. Like not a lot of teams are coming back from that. So I don't take anything really away from that game. Maybe Matt Stafford makes a couple of bad mistakes and keeps the Niners around, but the Rams have enough to play for that I think they pull it out and snap the losing streak.
Exactly why I'm terrified, my friend.
Of the reasons I'd be the exact same way.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those games. I just love it. This is what football's all about. So I think the Rams squeak one out too, especially at home. But man, nothing but respect for that team.
This has like 34-23 vibes, where the Rams like get a late touchdown to kind of seal it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the vibe this one, where it's kind of close, but the Rams kind of control it the whole time. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah, I think both teams are going to come out and slug it out, feel each other out a little bit on offense and on the offensive side of the ball. And then, I think we'll pull away. I love it. Okay, man, putting his neck on the line here, folks. The managing editor, Niner Wire. So, okay, this is what we like to close the show. We want to know a little bit more about Kyle and what makes him tick. So we have what's called a 2-minute drill with all our guests. And I'm just going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. You're in the red zone going in for the score. Here we go.
Cool.
All right, Kyle Madson, beverage of choice on game day.
Man, it depends. Water. Got to stay hydrated.
Healthy. All right.
Yeah. But if it's like, all right, like Super Bowl, I'm a like a whiskey mule guy. Just give me pick a whiskey, throw it in some ginger beer with a little bit of lime. That's terrific. If I'm going with a cocktail, that's what I'm going with. If I'm covering a game, it's coffee. I'm
Man, I'll tell you what. I'm in the coffee industry. We'll talk about that sometime. I'll get you some coffee and shoot it out there.
Oh yeah,
that'd
be great.
That's what I'm doing until I'm doing this all the time. But coffee's my drink too. So nothing but respect, my friend. Got some great coffee roasters in the Bay Area. Let's connect after the show.
All right,
let
me know.
People down there. I'll actually be out there next week.
Oh, cool.
Okay, rapid fire: Xbox, PlayStation, or PC?
Not a gamer.
None of them.
Not a gamer.
Okay,
so my mom worked for Sony growing up. I had a PlayStation the year it came out. I had a PS2 the year it came out. It was Madden 02 with Dante Culpepper on the front. I had Madden every year after that until 2010 or 2011 or so, I guess it's 2010, but stopped gaming when I started kind of getting into media, because it's to do this when you're 20, 21, 22 years old. It's like you're working, you're interning, you're going to school, you're doing this and that, and I just kind of fell by the wayside with games. And I'm just not very good at them. So I'm not going to fork over the money to have a thing to waste time that I'm also bad at. I'll just scroll Twitter for free.
There you go. Yeah. It's a guilty pleasure for some. Stick a fork in it. Let's move on. Okay. You're drafted in the NFL. What's your jersey number, Kyle?
8. Number 8.
Any reason? Is it Steve Young?
Cal Ripken Jr. was my favorite baseball player growing up. Yeah. I'm a big baseball guy.
Okay.
Giant Louisville Slugger tattoo here. I love baseball, and Cal Ripken Jr. was just I was 11 when he retired. I still remember watching that All-Star game in 2001 when in Seattle when A-Rod let him go play short, and I was like, oh hell yeah, A-Rod, that's awesome. Cal Ripken Jr. number 8. That's why I'd rock it.
Love it, man. I've been to Camden Yards. Unbelievable.
I want to go so
Unbelievable. Oh, God, you got to go. Okay, most underrated player of all time?
Oh, man.
That's
I should have prepared. This is the one I should have prepared for. I skimmed the questions. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm good. Most underrated player of all time.
Doesn't have to be a Niner, by the way. It's funny. D'Amico Ryans is on that staff because I think he's one of the more underrated players of all time.
He's really good. Yeah. I'm trying to think. The fact that Tony Baselli is not in the Hall of Fame yet feels insane to me. So I'm gonna go there. If I'm picking someone more in the Niners stratosphere, I think Bryant Young is a player who, like, Niner fans know and love him. I mean, he's a 49ers Hall of Famer.
Fans, my friend.
He's just he was such a baller at a position that doesn't get a ton of like national recognition. So I think Bryant Young is actually up there. He was on like the Hall of Fame's all 90s team, which is really hard to do. So yeah, Bryant Young is up there too.
Great play. Good choices, man. Very I love that you went on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, of course.
That's so awesome. I was thinking he's gonna pull out Jonathan Taylor. He's gonna pull he goes for the big guys on the line of scrimmage. I love that, man. Okay. Real quick, and then I got a final question for you. The Office, Parks and Rec, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What's your choice?
Oh,
or
man.
do you even care?
Oh, I do care. I do care very much. All right. So I have not watched It's Always Sunny in a long time. I think I fell off of that show in season 9, but that was one of my binge shows. But I, for some reason, just kind of fell. I love that show. I have yet to watch season 6 of Parks and Rec because I don't want it to be over. Like I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So I love PNR. The Office is a show that I always find really funny. And when it's on Comedy Central, I'll have it on and watch it. Or if it's on whatever streaming service I'm on, I'll turn it on and I like it. I've just not watched like all the way through. So there's sometimes you'll make an Office reference and I'm in there. Like I'm with you. But then there's other times like, and it's not a dislike of the show. It's just, I have a like finite amount of media time and that just hasn't quite made it in there yet. So, if I'm picking
just do a Jim
one
thing, just look at the camera.
Yeah, just if I'm picking one though, it's Parks and Rec. I just connected with those characters a lot more than I did.
Very nice.
Sunny or The Office.
First guest to choose Parks and Rec
Love
ever.
PNR.
Loving that, man. Loving it. Okay, final thing that we get Kyle on his way to his life. Little known fact, if you follow Kyle on Twitter, and you should, he is a wine guy. I am a wine guy. I'm up here in the Portland, Oregon area in wine country. He's down there pretty close to Napa, and I'm hearing Livermore.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend for wine right now, man? What should we be tasting? Anything?
All right,
is it a Pinot? Is it a Cab? What do you got?
If you are in Napa, you have to go to Visa Tui Winery. All right. They only sell their wines at the winery. They have like a deli inside the tasting room. You can get a bunch of food and snacks and, different charcuterie type of deals, breads, oils, and you can sit out. They have a bunch of picnic benches and stuff. You can buy a bottle of wine. They'll cork it for you there. You can drink your wine each. But they have 2 wines that I really like. One of them is called L'America, like America with an L. Unbelievable red blend, super good, really good, like really decent price point. One of my favorite wines, but my all-time favorite wine is from them. It's called Entanglement. The last one I had was a 2016 Entanglement. It is a Grenache, Syrah, and Malbec blend, I believe. I think that's right. But sounds good. It is unbelievable. Like for Christmas, the year I first got into wine, my mom got me 6 of those. Like she's just like, here, you like it so much, have these. So yeah, those are the 2 if I'm picking a couple. And then if you're going to Livermore, Wood Family Vineyards has a really good selection of reds and whites. So if you pop by Livermore, Wood Family Vineyard.
Okay, folks. Wine lovers, I'm all over that. I'm going to be watching this and taking notes on that. By the way, I just want to say the over and under, and first time ever on the show that the term charcuterie was used.
Was
by Kyle Madson.
On.
We went. Kyle Madson went just went full tilt on our face with that.
We're in San Francisco, charcuterie and wine on game days, right?
Nailed it, my friend. Nailed it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man. Great to get insight into the San Francisco 49ers on such a big week. Folks, those listening and watching, follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle A. Madson or at the Niners Wire. He is also the host of the Candlestick Chronicles on Blue Wire Podcast. All the usual folks, Apple, Spotify, and others. And of course, as mentioned, NinersWire.usatoday.com. He covers all things San Francisco 49ers and apparently more. My friend, thank you for joining us on Gridiron Icon.
Yeah, of course, man. Anytime, let me know.
We'll do this again, and we will jump back and grab you and get you on here. So stay tuned. You're a friend of the show now.
That sounds great. I love that. That was my goal.
Love it. Thanks, Kyle. And for everybody following us, just follow us on gridironicon.com, like, subscribe, and thank you for joining us.